a man who gets us started every single day on Pro Football Talk, live at Pro Football Talk on Twitter. And his book, Playmakers, is, if I'm not mistaken, let's see, it comes out 2 weeks from Wednesday, I will say. I'll say that. It was March 15th. I don't know. I know it's the last day of February and it's not a leap year. Math is not. I was told there was no math on this. But anyway, it comes out on March 15th. And it is also a book where you can pre-order it right now, where all books are sold. Mike Florio back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great, Rich. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
15 days.
2 weeks
Countdown.
from tomorrow.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Fantastic. Well, you're already for the second or third edition, or for paperback, you've got a whole chapter on Kyler Murray's statement that I'm holding up right here, I imagine.
Well,
right?
I think the statement itself would be a whole chapter.
What gives?
Hopefully in larger print.
How did this one hit you, Mike?
Well, it doesn't surprise me, because I think the subtext of what happened with Kyler Murray 3 weeks ago when he scrubbed the Cardinals from his social media pages, which has great significance to 24-year-olds because that's how they communicate and that's how they send messages. And then the report from Chris Mortensen from Super Bowl Sunday citing an unnamed source or unnamed sources that regard Murray as self-centered, finger-pointing, and immature. I think that this is part of the broader back and forth aimed at sending messages about the amount of money that's ultimately going to be available to Kyler Murray. And I think that Murray's agent understands / believes that whether it's chatter about Murray maybe not being the ideal quarterback, although plenty of quarterbacks, if they're in a situation where things aren't going their way, will come off as self-centered, finger-pointing, and immature, like Tom Brady when things aren't going his way. But Eric Burkhart represents both Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. Both guys are in line for new contracts. With Kingsbury, after the season ended, there was some chatter that Michael Bidwell, the owner of the team, was livid, and there was talk that maybe Kingsbury would be out. And I think Burkhart didn't react to that well. And when he controls the relationships with both guys and they're sort of tied together, I think this all comes down to money. And I think that's why his message was, let's have actions, not words. And maybe those reports we saw about Kingsbury, about Murray, trace back to an effort by the Cardinals to position this in a way that doesn't entail shattering the piggy bank the way that Burkhart may want them to.
Well, I mean, but how does it, any agent knows it's about contractual control, and other than making things uncomfortable for a little bit more uncomfortable than it might already have been for Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim when they have their combine appearances on Tuesday at 1:45 and 3 p.m. local time, respectively. What does this accomplish? What does this accomplish at all?
Well, it doesn't accomplish anything. It's just part of the posturing that sometimes is engaged in to involve the public and the media in setting the stage for whatever the number is going to be. I don't know what Eric Burkhart wants for Kyler Murray. I don't know what he wants for Cliff Kingsbury. But when you look at how the team went from 10-2 to 1-and-done in the postseason, halfway through the year, we're looking at Murray as the MVP. We're looking at the Cardinals as the best team in the NFL, and they fell apart. And for 9 straight seasons, Kingsbury as a head coach at Texas Tech for 6 years and 3 seasons with the Cardinals, he's had good, great starts, and he's tailed off down the stretch. Now, you can also say, well, his team's ultimately gotten better each year in Arizona, and that's accurate, but it doesn't change the fact that he tends to flame out. The rest of the league tends to catch up with him as the season goes on, and the same is true of Kyler Murray. And that ankle injury he suffered Week 8, the Thursday night game against the Packers, that came down to that throw to A.J. Green when A.J. Green didn't know the throw was coming his way, and they could have won that game if A.J. Green makes that catch. That's when Murray suffered the ankle injury the play before that, and I don't think he was the same all season long. He definitely wasn't the same guy in the playoff game. He had 2 carries for 6 yards. So this is about figuring out what the right number is. Hey, it's one thing to say we're going to give you a contract, but how much are we going to pay you? Are you going to be getting $40 million a year? Or are you going to be getting $30 million a year? That's a big difference. And I think that the Cardinals are going to try to push toward the lower end of that, and Burkhart is going to try to push his guy toward the higher end of that. And the question is, can they find a middle ground before we get to the start of a season where he's due to make, I think, $5.5 million in total compensation?
Well, that's a number that's not even remotely close to his level of play or his value. I mean, that's
the same is true for Lamar Jackson. He didn't get a contract. Different circumstance, though. Jackson represents himself and wouldn't engage the Ravens. The Ravens would have done something if they could have gotten Lamar Jackson's attention. So this year the question is, you've got an agent who's engaged. You've got a team that is interested. Can you get the two circles of the Venn diagram to come together? That's going to be the challenge for both sides as we go forward.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. So he's not going to be available, right? Like, this quarterback carousel is not going to involve number one, despite, by the way, excellent stationery, and despite this statement, right? Like, he's not on this is not going to happen.
Does any quarterback have a good personal logo?
I don't know.
So many of them have personal logos. I don't like any of them.
Really? You don't like the TB12?
I don't like the TB12.
Okay.
I guess you get used to it because you see it everywhere.
Yes.
But like the Russell Wilson logo, not good. Just the logos aren't good. Whatever they're paying, and they're probably paying a lot to some graphic designer to come up with these things, they're just not getting the bang for their buck. Anyway.
So then let's get to the quarterback carousel here. Mike Florio on the Rich Eisen Show on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. So what does the quarterback carousel look like? Does it involve Kyler Murray, or this just is not going to deteriorate unless we're a couple statements away from that? What do you think?
Anybody that would want him is going to have to be ready to give him what he wants financially and give the Cardinals what they would want. So I think that complicates things. And I don't know who out there would be clamoring to make him one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in football and give the Cardinals whatever it would take to make it happen. You have to be willing to listen to anyone who calls you and makes you an offer. Every player that you have in a contract, that contract is an asset that you can flip into something that may be more. And if you don't view this guy as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and someone else does, and they're willing to pay him accordingly and pay you accordingly, you have to at least listen. I'd be surprised if it happens, though, and I think there's a lot of people out there who just would not want Kyler Murray to be their quarterback at all. That's something Sims has said on PFT Live, and I agree with him. There's just, he's too short for some coaches. For others, he's not, but for some, they're just going to say, no, it's a non-starter. And when you take away the running ability, he looks even shorter than he is, because then he's stuck back there in the pocket and he's trying to find his way through the throwing lanes. And if he's not going to pull down the ball and take off with it, it's not that same level of threat that we've seen when he's at his best. So I don't think he's going to be on the carousel, but all it takes is one team to contact the Cardinals and say, hey, we're willing to give this guy what you're not, and we're willing to give you a lot to make it happen, and let's do something. The Cardinals would have to at least take it seriously, but I'd be stunned if it happens. It'd have to be so much. And, as a practical matter, if you're going to trade for somebody, what you have to give up to get him from another team and what you have to give up to get him on a contract, that's a sliding scale. And the more you pay the player, the less you want to give up in draft pick compensation. The more you give up in draft pick compensation or player contracts, the less you want to pay. I just think it would be too hard to pull it off, and I just don't think we're even going to go there. I'd like to think this ends with an acceptable contract for Kyler Murray, but we'll see. There's going to be more huffing and puffing before they sit down and work this thing out.
Well, let's talk Rodgers. I had Diana Rossini on the show, and she mentioned the number of $50 million a year. McAfee said he spoke to Rodgers, and he called that report false. I saw your post on it. I agreed with what you said. I'd said it earlier in the day as well. I think if he's $50 million's worth it. I mean, like, we're talking about a LeBron extension in the NBA, 2 years, $97 million. Why not that for Aaron Rodgers if he's playing as well as LeBron is at his age in his sport?
Right after the Packers lost to the 49ers in the playoffs, I wrote at PFT that if the Packers want to avoid Aaron Rodgers' offseason drama 2.0, there's an easy way to fix it. Go to him right now and offer him 2 years, $100 million, fully guaranteed. That's $50 million a year. If you fully guarantee it, it makes Jordan Love moot for the remainder of his rookie contract. He's got 2 years left under contract with the fifth-year option available. But that's the easy way to do it. That's what I wrote. And in response to that, I heard from somebody connected to Rodgers, and I know he swears no one connected to him talks, and I'm shocked he's that naive, because everybody talks, especially when they're trying to help their client. And what I heard was, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's not about money at this point. They offered him a huge contract last year. It's not about money. It's about where he's happy. It's about where he's comfortable. It doesn't matter how much he's getting. What matters to him is where he's playing. Now, we're wired to believe that whenever someone says it's not about money, it's absolutely about money. And if it is, yes, $50 million per year is fair for the back-to-back regular season MVP. And when we see where the salary cap is going, because the first line of defense is, the salary cap. Oh, you can make it work under the salary cap. That's just something that the teams throw out there to justify not doing what players want them to do. You can make it work. And each year the salary cap is going to go up more and more and more with the pandemic behind us, with the new TV deals kicking in, with the gambling revenue increasing all the time. And anything you do to kick cap dollars into future years, those cap dollars are going to mean less in future years because the total cap keeps going higher and higher. So they can make it work without him accounting for 25% of the salary cap right now. They could pay him $50 million a year, and they could push all that money into future years and rip the Band-Aid off when the cap is a lot more than the $220 million or whatever it's going to be this year. So, yes, I think he deserves it. There's nothing unreasonable with wanting it. I'm just not sold on the idea that it really is an issue for him at this point. It's more about where he's going to be and what he's going to do. And, he said 17 days ago that a decision will come pretty quickly after he takes a couple of weeks to think about it. We're in that range now, and here we are 16 days away from the start of the league year. He's said multiple times before free agency begins he's going to make his desire known. And, Rich, I think the entire quarterback carousel hinges on him, that the teams out there that are considering which quarterbacks they're going to go after, I think everyone's going to wait and see what happens with Rodgers before some of these deals get done. I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen any of the unofficial trades like the Stafford to the Rams, which was weeks before the start of the league year, the Alex Smith to Washington from several years ago. I just don't think we're going to see any of that until Rodgers makes his intentions known.
Yeah, so he is a linchpin of it. What about Russell Wilson? What do you think?
I think at the end of the day, he's going to stay in Seattle. I think he needs to reestablish himself. And I'm not sure that you're going to get the same market for him this year as we saw last year because there's questions about whether or not he's in an early stage of overall physical decline. And it may just be that other younger quarterbacks are so good that in comparison to them, he doesn't look as spectacular as he used to, but he doesn't move like he used to. He doesn't run like he used to. And then when he suffered that finger injury on a Thursday night when his hand encountered the helmet of Aaron Donald, he was never the same the rest of the year. And I know it was heroic for him to return when he did and he got back on the field, but he was just never the same guy throwing the ball. He's not the guy he used to be running the ball. And I don't know that I put together a gigantic package to try to get him, especially because he may want a new contract on the way through the door. And he's always put himself in a position where when it's time to negotiate, his agent, who represents no other NFL players, he's the Tom Hagen of NFL agents. He's got one client. He always drives a hard bargain because he doesn't have some broader dance that he has to be sensitive to where he's going to piss somebody off as it relates to this client or that client. He always drives a very shrewd, hard bargain for Russell Wilson, and that's out there. He's got 2 years left on his contract, and he typically does a deal with 1 year left. And if there's going to be a trade, he's probably going to want that new deal right now. So I think it's going to be tough to do. And the Seahawks, I could see the Seahawks convincing him to give it one more shot in Seattle. And then if it doesn't work this year, then next year would be the time that Russell Wilson gets moved.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. So give me a team that would make a big swing at quarterback that would spin that carousel, or a quarterback that can raise his hand and say I want out, or publicly or not. Like Stafford was that guy last year, and the Rams were that team. So what do you think?
Well, where's the team this year that you look at and say you're definitely going to put yourself in a situation where the deck is stacked in your favor if you go there? And I kind of think that's why at the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers may stay put. I've gone from thinking he's definitely going to ask to leave to maybe he's going to realize that, if he goes somewhere else and they have a strong regular season and don't get to the Super Bowl, then maybe all of a sudden the narrative shifts from the Packers can't put a winner around Aaron Rodgers to Aaron Rodgers can't finish the deal with a team that does really well in the regular season and then peters out in the postseason. You look at the AFC, and that's where I think the Packers will want to send him. They're not going to want to have to contend with him, even though they may not have to worry about that post-Rodgers, looking at the quality of their quarterback option. We still don't know what Jordan Love's going to be, but let's say Rodgers ends up with someone like the Steelers or the Broncos, and the Broncos are widely regarded as the front runner. I don't think you can look at a destination for Rodgers as some sort of dramatic upgrade like it was for Brady going from a Patriots team that was in decline to the Buccaneers, Stafford going from a Lions team that's perpetually in decline to the Rams. The Packers are the two-time defending number one seed who have failed to parlay that into a Super Bowl win. Where do you go if you're Rodgers, where you can feel confident that you're going to strike gold and make it 3 for 3 quarterbacks with new teams getting a Super Bowl win right out of the gates? I think it's tough to find a spot. The Colts intrigue me. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is interested in the Colts, but they're clearly done with Carson Wentz.
You think?
And
you
Rodgers
think, huh?
is 0-2 lifetime at Indy, so he knows it's hard to win in that building. And it's, you play all your games in a dome. You don't have to worry about the cold and the wind and the rain. If they could pull it off, that would be something.
And you think they're done with Wentz?
I think they're done with Wentz. There's been too much noise about them being done with Wentz, with no pushback whatsoever from the Colts, to make me think it has to be true that they're done with Wentz. The question is, what can they do with him? And if the Steelers are going to go with Mason Rudolph, then that's the easiest. That's the easiest answer, right? I mean, come on. Mason Rudolph's probably a nice guy. I don't know him personally, but give me a break. Have we not seen enough from Mason Rudolph?
Well, I mean,
no way in hell is Mason Rudolph.
No, I know that.
The quarterback of the Steelers.
And we had our friend Rick Stroud on the show last week as well from Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Times. And he said, similar to what Ed Bouchette said when he came on, is like, look, this is what they have now. This is what they've got now. Like, if it started now, this is the guy now. And the question is like, who, if not him, then who? And for the Steelers, Bouchette said there's no way they're making a big swing. They might draft somebody, maybe, like instead of a big swing, a check swing at quarterback, like Winston or Jimmy G, maybe, or and then Tampa. I threw out the name of Brady maybe coming back, once he's done hanging out with Lily Tomlin. He then decides that there's more than just a movie, right? Like that's where he went with the Gabbert scenario.
Well, we reported earlier today that the Dolphins were thinking about and planning to go after Brady and Sean Payton as a package deal, and I don't think Brady's done. I think Brady's done with the Bucks. And I think Brady is retired for the offseason. And he said it himself on his podcast when he uttered the never say never line, which got most of the attention. The other thing that caught my ear was him saying that when June and July rolls around, he doesn't know how he's going to feel, because that was dangerously close to what Brett Favre said to David Letterman April 2008 when he was retired and nobody thought he was coming back. And he said something along the lines of, when training camp rolls around, something's bound to happen. I was like, holy crap, this guy's coming back. And when Brady says, I don't know how I'm going to feel, well, you know what? I know how he's going to feel, and you know how he's going to feel. And everybody listening knows how he's going to feel. He's going to feel like, I can't let this sport go forward without me because I'm good enough to still play. So maybe he placates Giselle with 4 months at home, and she realizes, you know what? 4 months is enough. And whether it's the Dolphins, whether it's the 49ers, I still think he's going to end up with the 49ers. But I just think he's done with the Buccaneers. He retired from the Buccaneers, not from football. And maybe that's why that statement only mentioned the Buccaneers. And it was every single person in the organization who was thanked. Maybe the real message is he's retiring from the Buccaneers.
And you're reporting that Brady's retired and Sean Payton steps away. And then the Dolphins swooped in and said, how about the both of you together right here before they hired Mike McDaniel? That's what you're saying?
They were planning to go after both guys, and the Flores lawsuit resulted in them pulling the plug on it. I don't know whether they decided to pull the plug or maybe the league office said you can't do this because of the Flores lawsuit. But, I poked around yesterday and sought comment from the Dolphins, and on the record they declined comment, but off the record, multiple team sources said that they actually made a request for permission to speak to Sean Payton after Payton resigned from the Saints, and the Saints declined the request for permission, which is odd to me because you can, number one, get him out of the conference because everybody thinks he's coming back to the Cowboys at some point. Number two, you get something for him. And with Brady, all that Dolphin sources would acknowledge is there's been internal discussions about him becoming a minority owner because he's very close with Bruce Beal, the number 2 guy in ownership who's eventually, presumably, going to take over the team from Stephen Ross. So, but look, Hey, Brady is the unnamed quarterback in the Flores lawsuit that Flores claims Stephen Ross tried to get him to tamper with. The Patriots were petrified 2 years ago that Brady was going to land with the Dolphins because of the Beal connection. So, yeah, that was a thing until the Brian Flores lawsuit came along and made it not a thing.
Mike, as always, a great chat. I greatly appreciate it, and look for my call post-combine prior to your book coming out. My platform is yours, compadre. Thank you.
Appreciate it, pal. Anytime.
Thank you. That is Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk. So many items, food for thought right there, to say the least. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.